Good morning, viewers. Welcome to channel-based counseling of IGNU and myself, Dr. Vijay Arya. We'll be referring to the strategic management course of MBA. If we refer the previous session, then we discussed about different type of strategies where the business strategy was covered. In today's session, we will be covering the another two unit of block 3, that is formulation of a strategy, where we will be covering the competitive strategy and the corporate strategy. So within unit number 8, competitive strategy, the point of discussion today would be about the competitive strategy, the concept, the formulation of competitive strategy, wheels of competitive strategy, level of formulating competitive strategy, and different factors and parameters which are associated in terms of determining formulation of competitive strategy will also be covered. Framework for competitor analysis and the components will also be covered in this unit. Role of competitor analysis components and some other concepts and the types related to competitive moves will be covered. Key dimensions of competitive strategy, the concept of fragmented industries and emerging industries, along with different elements of structural environments in emerging industries will be discussed today. So let's begin with the concept of competitive strategy. Just to start about the concept of competitive strategy, you must have seen that companies or the corporates very frequently change their plans, maybe the pricing, maybe the product specific changes, maybe the market specific changes. So just try to imagine what is the idea behind it. It is the competitive strategy we are talking about. It means the competitive strategy defines how the firm intends to create and maintain a competitive advantage with respect to the competitors, so-called the rivals. Here, holding a competitive advantage over competitors means to be more profitable than competitors over the long run. Here, it again need to understand that the strategy and tactics somewhere need to be addressed, particularly addressing the competitive perspective or the market competitiveness. Subsequently, when we also refer the set of policies and procedures being followed by the rivals, so in that case, it give a kind of gains or uses to gain a competitive advantage to the firms. Therefore, in addition to that, it also make a kind of process of identifying and executing actions that allow a business to improve its competitive edge, or sometimes we call it as competitive position. As an example, we can take that strategies may be to raise the value of their products and services for consumers, maybe investors and employees. Now, we need to discuss the formulation of competitive strategy. And here, two major questions arise in the corporates. One is, what are the goals, which is the ends, the purpose for which the organizations are established. The second is the means, where we are talking about the policies. Here, what policies are there to achieve these ends, that is goals. So these two things need to be answered at the time of setting up of the formula for success, and therefore a wheel of competitive strategy need to be understood here, which has been floated, identified by Porter, which says, and which is also known as a broader view of an organization competitive strategy, where at the center you can see the goal of the institution, organization is there, which is aligned with around 10 such areas. Like it may include target markets, the marketing of the firm with respect to the products, including goods and services, the sales force, the way the sales will be initiated, specific policies to address the sales related issues, the distribution channel partners. Apart from that, the manufacturing practices, maybe what kind of techniques are being referred, are considered here, the labor, the workforce we are talking about, which is again aligned with the goals. Then the procurement of the raw material or the other aspects which is considered within the purchasing, research and development for the betterment of the existing services or the products are come under this particular aspect. Then the finance and control as the major key for utilizing the resources. And last, the product aspect, the final product for the market. Now, when we refer the this field, we further need to refer the level of formulating competitive strategy, where two aspect, one is the company, the corporation position need to be understood, and at the same time, the position of the industry also need to be considered. The moment we refer the company position, then it is somewhere the internal factor or internal position where the strength and weaknesses need to be understood while framing the competitive strategy, and it also need to take care of the personal values of the key implementers, which is the corporation that we are talking about. At the same time, for framing or for referring to the formulation of competitive strategy, the external factors to the company, that is the industry in broader sense, also need to be understood, where the opportunities and threats, particularly from the point of view of economic and technical, also need to understood, and the expectations of the consumer, that is broader societal expectations, also need to correlate while framing the competitive strategy. And altogether, these four aspects are interrelated at the time of formulating the competitive strategy by the corporate houses. Now, we also need to understand the different factors which helps in determining the formulation of the competitive strategy. There are four major factors or variables which are used in terms of as a test measure in terms of consistency of the competitive strategy when it is taken into consideration. The first is internal consistency, second, environmental fit, third, resource fit, fourth, implementation. We will be discussing about each these of the variables in detail. The first parameter in this factor of internal consistency is towards the realistic goals. So within the framework of internal consistency, we need to refer the realistic goals rather than the very vague goals or the purpose for which we are considering the competitive strategy. Apart from that, the key operating policies should be sync along with the goals of the organization. Apart from that, the key operating policies should also be aligned with each other. Means different policies, different key operating policies should be aligned to each other. Apart from that, the second factor, if we refer with reference to the formulation of competitive strategy, then it is environmental fit, where the parameter need to be considered is capitalization of industry opportunities as per the goals and the policies of the firm. Second, goals and policies deal with the industry threats, timing of the goals and policies, with respect to the environmental changes. Goals and policies respond to societal expectations. Therefore, this particular factor also plays a crucial role. The third factor is a resource fit, where two major parameters are considered while determining or formulating the competitive strategy. One is goals and policies, and that need to be matched with the available resources with the organization. And second aspect is with respect to the goals and policies in terms of the adaptability towards the change if taking place in the market. The fourth factor is implementation, where three major consideration of parameter is well-designed goals, which can be implemented. It has to be more realistic rather than more imaginative. The second aspect of parameter within that factor of implementation is alignment of goals and policies and that of the core values of the organization. It has to have a link with the core values of the organization. The third aspect or the parameter within the implementation factor is sufficient managerial capability, and it is meant for an effective implementation purposes. And if we try to conclude based on these four factors, we can say that above consideration help the organization in terms of formulating an effective competitive strategy. Now, subsequently, we also need to understand the important framework for competitor analysis. Here, the competitor analysis is one of the major components of strategy formulation. Therefore, the organizations performs a competitor analysis and take it seriously. Four components which are considered in the competitor analysis which plays crucial role are future goals of the competitor, current strategy being adopted by the competitor, assumptions being taken care by the competitor, and the capabilities of the competitor. We'll be talking about each one of these four components in detail. But before that, we need to understand through this visual how they are interlinked and what kind of questions or what kind of thoughts emerge based on these four components. So, in the case of future goals, at all levels of management and in multiple dimensions need to be thought of, which is something what drives the competitor. At the same time, the other aspect, other component in the case of computer is the assumptions. And if we refer the other aspect, which is what the competitor is doing and can do in future, is something that is correlated considering two component. One is current strategy, which is basically answered with the question how the business is currently competing. The second component under this aspect is the capabilities, which talk about the strengths and the weaknesses of the competitor. When we club together all these four components, then the, the profile towards the competitor's response can have four major questions. Say, is competitor satisfied with current position? What strategy shifts is competitor likely to make in future? Where is competitor vulnerable? And what will provoke greatest retaliation? Now, considering these four components, we need to have the major role to identify from the perspective of the competitive strategy. Therefore, the first component to be considered here is the future goals. This particular component helps and to diagnose the goals of the competitor by way of four major parameters. That is by predicting the current financial position of the competitor. Second, by predicting the strategic moves of the competitors if they are not satisfied with their present position. Third aspect is towards predicting the reaction of the competitor to the external environment. The fourth, predicting reactions to strategic changes taking place in the market. The second component was the assumptions which the competitor is taking. And this component helps to identify two categories of competitors' assumptions. First is self assumption of the competitor, where, for an example, can be considered like the social conscious of the organization or the market leadership. At the same time, the second category of competitors' assumption could be the competitors' assumptions about the industry and other organizations which are a part of the industry. The third component is the current strategy, which usually helps the organization in terms of assessing the current policies of the competitor in terms of the functional areas. Both the internal and external policies are considered in this particular case. The fourth and the last component is about the capabilities. In this, the role of the competitive strategy is towards helping in assessing the competitor's strength and weaknesses using Porter's five forces model, which we have already discussed in the previous session, which talk about the threats of new entrants, threats of the substitute goods or the services, bargaining power of the supplier or the buyer, and the industry rivalry were the five major forces. Now, based on these four major components, we can conclude that combination of these four components, the competitor position as defensive or offensive can be assessed. And accordingly, it can help us as an organization to predict the move to be made by the competitor. Here, it is very interesting that we need to understand the concept of the competitive move. Broadly speaking, a market oriented action which is newly launched by a firm that threatens the demand oblique supply status quo of the market is somewhere addressed or considered as a competitive move. At the same time, an effective competitive move is one with a quick outcome that is favorable to the firm's interest and doesn't destabilize the industry or create a competitive war. Therefore, we subsequently need to understand two major types of competitive moves. First, one is cooperative move, or sometimes it is also termed as non-threatening move or the defensive competitive move. Here, the concept behind this cooperative move is that it doesn't threaten the competitors and it has three major categories to be considered under this move. First, by improving the position of the organization along with the position of the competitor, even if they are not at par. The second type of category under cooperative move is that by way of improving the position of the organization along with the position of the competitors only if the significant number match. And the third type of category within this type of move is that by improving the position of the organization as the competitors are not able to match with them. The second type of competitive move is the threatening move, which is also known as the offensive competitive moves, which actually threatens the competitors, which subsequently have three major means. First is the key to such type of move is predicting and influencing retaliation. The second aspect within threatening move is that retaliation can be fast or it can be slow, it can be effective or it can be ineffective, it can be tough or it can be soft too. Apart from that, based on the kind of retaliation, the move can be adjusted as highly threatening or it maybe the mild one. Now, based on this competitor move, we need to understand around 11 key dimensions of the competitive strategy. The first could be the specialization. Here, the specialization focuses on the efforts of the organization in specializing in terms of in teams of products line, market segments, and niche markets. Second dimension could be branding, which focuses on the brand identification of the products, then on the competition through promotional techniques of the firm. Apart from that, the third dimension could be push or pull strategy, which focuses primarily on the degree to which brand identification can be done. And here it can be direct selling or it can be through the e-commerce or online selling means. Where if we further refer the push strategy, then it means involving pushing the product or brand to the target customers in a broader manner. But at the same time, if we refer the other aspect or the other type of strategy, it is pull strategy, where the customers are attracted towards the product by means of creating the brand image or maybe high level of promotion mix. Now, we further need to understand some more dimensions, that is the distribution channel, in terms of deciding about an appropriate distribution channel, whether it is company owned, retail outlet owned based, whether it is online platform based, or specialty outlets are part of the distribution channel. Apart from that, the other dimension could be related to the quality of product, where the focus is on the type of raw material, specifications, maybe the features, and all these help in terms of making a quality finished product for the firm. The other dimension towards the competitive strategy is technological leadership. The idea behind is to focus on the degree to which an organization seeks leadership in the technology and to have such age where it can compete as well as derive its own way in the competitive market. The other dimension of competitive strategy is the vertical integration, which is the degree to which the organization follows, whether it is forward or backward integration. Another dimension is cost positioning, which means the optimum utilization of the resources in terms of the cost is considered for competitive advantage. The next dimension is the services. It is the degree to which the organization provides ancillary services like in-house service network, maybe the credit, maybe after-sale services, maybe many more. The next dimension is the pricing policy, which describes the price position of the organization in the market. This is a distinct strategic variable and it should be considered separately. And the last but not the least is the leverage, which can include the financial, operational leverage, or maybe the combination of both. Now, based on it, we need to understand two major type of industries and the competitive strategy applicable to these type of industries. So first, we will be covering the fragmented industry concept, which is one in which many companies compete and there is no single or small group of companies which dominate the industry. It is also a kind of composition of organization which do not have a significant market share but can influence the industry strongly. It also consists of a large number of small and medium-sized organizations. The industries make the environment unique in the sense that they do not have market leaders. Some few examples, if we consider from the point of view of fragmented industries, then restaurants, cab services, automobile repair and services, restaurant industry, and the furniture business could be the part of it. There are five major steps which are considered while referring or framing the competitive strategy, particularly in the case of fragmented industries. The step one is to conducting industry and competitor analysis. And the idea is to identify the sources of the competitive forces in the industry and the standing of the competitors in the industry. So in that case, it's a kind of analysis the position of the competitors. The second step would be identifying the causes of fragmentation in industry, and the idea behind that step two is to have an overall assessment in terms of their relationship with the economies of the industry. The third step is by examining the causes of fragmentation, where the idea is to assess whether these causes can be overcome, say by innovation or strategic change by the firm. The fourth step is by predicting the new structural equilibrium in the industry, which can be taken care by predicting whether the industry is able to give attractive returns or not. The last step is coping the fragmentation, which means that needs to select the best alternative to deal with the present situation. Considering this fragmented industry concept, we also need to understand the concept of emerging industries. Here, an emerging industry is a group of companies in a line of business formed around a new product or idea that is in the early stages of development. An emerging industry typically consists of just a few companies and is often centered around new technology, since they are new or reformed due to emergence of socioeconomic developments, resulting in their main features that there are no specific rules of the game. There are very recently, you learners must have seen very new changes in the market, like the use of artificial intelligence, the use of robotics, maybe virtual reality based options in the retail and other sectors, online gaming options, self driving cars, maybe OTT platforms in the entertainment sector, and the biotechnology. So, all these areas are the example of the emerging industries. Now, if we refer the some of the prominent elements of structural environment in the case of emerging industries, then almost seven such elements we can visualize. One can be uncertain strategy, it can be high volatility, it can be nascent organizations and spin-offs, it can be fast first time buyers, shorter time period, subsidy, or maybe uncertain technological environment. Now, we further need to understand the kind of competitive strategies which can address these type of emerging industries situation. So for that, one such strategy could be the part of shaping industry structure. It can be taken care by setting the industry rules, by making appropriate strategic choices in the areas of pricing and marketing, or maybe some other correlated areas. The second way of competitive strategy in the case of emerging market or emerging industries could be externalities, or considering the externalities, where the organization should promote standardization and attract first time buyers so that they can be retained to the maximum extent for the respective firm. The third aspect of competitive strategy could be changing role of supply chain, where it should adapt to the changing conditions of its suppliers and distribution channel for a strategic leverage. And the last strategy could be shift of mobility barriers, where it should avoid common barriers, which can include proprietary technology, access to raw materials, and distribution channel. And it can also include the cost advantage occurring due to the expense curve and the risk. Now, we need to understand the corporate level strategy, which is the last unit of block 3. And within that, we will be covering these topics. Say, we need to understand within that corporate level strategy and different types of corporate strategy, the concept of stability strategy, conditions which favors stability strategy, four approaches to stability strategy, concept of expansion strategies, conditions for opting expansion strategies, intensification in expansion strategies, and solves product market expansion grid, and integration in expansion strategies, reasons which favors integration in expansion strategies, diversification and its types, related and unrelated diversification, alternative routes to diversification, and the concept of retrenchment strategies and its various types. So let's begin the term to discuss here, that is the corporate strategy concept. The case of corporate strategy is something which dominate the position or which helps in dominating the position of a corporate in the industry. Therefore, corporate strategies are concerned with the broad long-term questions that the firm asks, which is what businesses are we in and what do we want to do with these businesses. And therefore, the corporate strategies are sets the overall direction for the organization to follow. It also spells out the extent, pace, and timing of the organization's growth. It is mainly concerned with the choice of businesses, products, and markets. Here, some more questions need to be followed while referring to the corporate strategies, like what should be the nature and value of the organization in the broadest sense. Other could be what are the aims in terms of creating value for stakeholders, what kind of businesses should the organization be in, what should be the scope of activity, whether divestment is required, whether expansion is required, what structure, systems, and processes will be necessary to link the various businesses to each other and to the corporate center, or maybe some more questions may be dealt here in terms of dealing with the corporate strategies or framing the corporate strategies. So broadly speaking, four major types of corporate strategies are considered. First is the stability strategies, which make which is used in a situation where which make no change to the organization's current position or activities, and it is the retention of the existing strategy. The second type of corporate strategy is growth strategies, where the expand the organization activities is considered. The third type of strategy of the corporate is, or the corporate strategy is, the retrenchment strategies, which reduce the organization's level of activities. And this type of strategy is considered during the slowdown position or where the return on investment to the corporate is going down. The last type of corporate strategy is the combination strategy, which is the combination of the previous three. That is the stability strategy, growth strategy, or the retrenchment strategies. So let's talk about in detail about each of these strategies. So the first is the stability strategy. As discussed earlier, stability strategy means maintaining its current business and product portfolios by maintaining the existing level of effort and is satisfied with incremental growth. Usually, organizations decide to serve the same markets with the same product, and they continue to pursue the same objectives with the strategic thrust or incremental improvement of functional performances. At the same time, the organization concentrates its resources in a narrow product market sphere for developing a meaningful competitive advantage. Apart from that, the stability strategy is a defensive strategy as the products, markets, and functions remain same and they don't change. It is ideal in stable business environment where particularly an organization can devote its efforts in improving its efficiency while not being threatened with external changes which are taking place in the market. If we refer the reference of the stability strategy, then there are certain conditions under which the stability strategy is referred. First could be environmental turbulences is minimal and the organization does not foresee any major threat to itself and the industry concerned as a whole. The second situation or condition could be the organization just finished a period of rapid growth and they needs to consolidate its gains before pursuing more growth for the firm. The third situation could be the organization's growth ambitions are very modest and it is content with incremental growth. The other condition could be for the stability strategy is that the industry is in a mature stage with a very few or no growth prospect and the organization is currently in a comfortable position in the industry itself. Now, there are four major approaches which are concerned while referring to the stability strategy. First is the holding strategy, which means the organization continues at its present rate of development. And in this particular approach, it suits to such organizations which does not have requisite resources to pursue increased growth for a longer period of time. The other type of approach towards the stability strategy is the stable growth. In this, the alternative essentially involves avoiding change, representing indecision, or timidity in making a choice for change. The third approach is harvesting strategy, where the organization has a dominant market share and they seeks to take advantage of their position, thereby generating cash for future business expansion. The fourth approach is important, that is profit or end game strategy, where the idea is that the organizations adopting this strategy by deciding to follow the same technology at least partially while transiting into new technological domains. So if we refer the other type of strategy, that is the expansion strategy. So the expansion strategy is a bit aggressive in nature and it is designed to allow organization to maintain its competitive position in rapidly growing national and international market. Therefore, they successfully compete, survive, and flourish. An organization has to pursue an expansion strategy. An expansion strategy also provide a kind of blueprint for business organization in order to achieve their long-term growth objective, which are essentially linked with the goals as well as the policies that they are linked with it. It also allows them to maintain their competitive advantage even in the advanced stages of product and market evolution. Now, there are certain conditions that one need to understand in terms of opting out the expansion strategies, and these conditions are that organization having high growth objective. The second condition could be new opportunities in the present market, especially the external market. Market leader trying to continue being a market leader, volatile situation in the market, surplus resources available in the market, and maybe favorable regulatory environment. Apart from that, when we refer the expansion strategies, we also need to understand the concept of intensification. So, intensification involves expansion within the existing line of businesses, where the intensive expansion strategy involves safeguarding the present position and expanding in the current product market space to achieve a growth target. Such an approach is very useful for organizations that have not fully exploited the opportunities existing in their current product market domain. Here, the intensive expansion of an organization can be accomplished in three ways. One could be market penetration, second, market development, and product development, which can be easily understood with the help of a ENSOF product market expansion grid, which has been identified in 1968 by ENSOF, where two aspects, that is product and the market, has been linked or showcased through the linkages, where if you can see in the visual that the existing product and the existing market is something that the market is into the penetration mode, but at the same time, if there is a possibility of shifting of the existing product to the new product base within the existing market base, then it is termed as a kind of product development. But when the new market are explored, new market are targeted with the existing product, then in that case, it's a kind of market development phase. And in both these cases, where new market or new product is explored, it amount to a position of increase in the risk possibility. And ultimately, when the product is new and at the same time the market is new, so that situation is something, a situation of diversification. Now, based on it, we need to understand the concept of integration, particularly from the point of view of the expansion strategies, if we considering in the corporate strategy point of sight. So here, the integration strategy involves expanding externally by combining with other organizations. Here, the combination involves association and integration among different organizations and is essentially driven by a need for survival and also for the growth by building synergies. Here, the combination of organizations may take the merger or the consolidation. So these are the two ways, two routes through which the combination can take place. That merger means that combination of two or more concerns or the firms into one final entity. The merged concern go out of existence and their assets and liabilities are taken over by the acquiring organization. If we refer the other route of combination, that is the consolidation route, so it's a combination of two or more business units to form an entirely new organization, and all the original business entities cease to exist after the combination route. Here, we further need to understand some of the reasons which favors to refer integration in the expansion strategies. So those reasons are in order to increase the market share, maybe to avoid the cost of developing new products and internally, and by bringing them to the market, maybe for the purpose of to reduce the risk of entering new businesses, maybe to speed up the process of entering the market, maybe to become more diversified in the market, and last but not the least reason could be to reduce the intensify of competition by taking over the competitor's business. Here, we need to understand the concept of diversification from the point of view of the corporate strategy. It means the diversification involves moving into new lines of business. When an industry consolidates and becomes mature, most of the organizations in the industry would reach the limits of growth using vertical or say horizontal growth strategies. And these, there are two basically major type of diversification. One is the related diversification, which is also termed as the concentric diversification. The second type of diversification is unrelated diversification, which is also known as conglomerate diversification. Now we need to understand each one of these two type of diversification. So first we will be discussing about the related diversification. So when an organization is said to have pursued concentric diversification strategy, when it enters into new product or service area which belonging to different industry category, but the new product or services similar to the existing one with respect to the technology or maybe production or maybe in the sense of the marketing channels or the customers being referred. At the same time, if we refer the unrelated diversification or the conglomerate diversification, then conglomerate diversification is a growth strategy in which an organization seeks to grow by adding entirely unrelated products and markets to its existing businesses. Here, the organization introduces new products using different technologies in new markets. A conglomerate consists of a number of product divisions which sell different products principally to their own markets rather than to each other. Considering this diversification, we also need to understand the different alternate routes available in the case of diversification. Primarily, the merger and acquisition is one, which, although we have discussed, in which two or more organizations combine operations through an exchange of stock. In a merger, only one organization entity will eventually remain. But in case of acquisition, is a purchase of one organization by the other. If you refer the second type of alternate routes in diversification, then it can be strategic partnering, where it occurs when two or more organizations establish a relationship that combines their resources, capabilities, and core competencies in order to achieve some business objectives, which is having primarily three major types of such strategic partnering. One is joint venture by way of joint venture. The other is by way of long-term partnerships. The third is by way of strategic alliances. So we will be discussing about these three. So the first is the strategic partnering by way of joint venture. In the case of joint venture, two or more firms form a separate independent organization for strategic purposes. But when we talk about the long-term partnership from the point of view of the strategic partnering, so in that particular case, two or more organizations enter a legal contract for a specific business purpose. Once the purpose is over, the long-term partnership is over. The third type of strategic partnering is by way of strategic alliances. In that, two or more organizations share resources, capabilities, or distinctive competencies in order to pursue some business purpose. Now we have reached to the final stage of our discussion towards the corporate strategy, and therefore the last strategy is, or in fact the third last strategy is the retrenchment strategy. In that case, you will notice that during a specific situation, the companies find it very difficult to sustain. those situations could be, as discussed earlier, the poor performance, maybe the recession period, maybe the rate of return is something not favoring to the organization. So in that case, retrenchment is a short run renewal strategy designed to overcome organizational weaknesses that are contributing to deteriorating performances. At the same time, retrenchment strategies call for two primary actions. One is something addressing to the cost cutting issue, and second is with respect to the restructuring. Here, three major type of retrenchment strategy can be referred. One is turnaround strategy, second is survival strategy, and third is the liquidation strategy. We can refer each one of them here. The turnaround strategy involves the classic retrenchment activities, which may include the product elimination, maybe the downsizing of the workforce, and it usually occurs due to increased competition in the market, maybe shortage of the raw material in the market, maybe due to a decrease in the profit margins or the profit share of the firm. It can also caused due to the operating problems, including the strikes in the human resources, that is the labor strike, and maybe the depressed price level in the present scenario. So in all these situations, the turnaround strategy can be referred. The second type of strategy in the case of retrenchment strategy could be the survival strategy. It is it is referred when the organization is on the verge of the extinction. It can opt for divestment, maybe spin-off, or maybe restructuring business operations. And the third and last type of retrenchment strategy could be the liquidation strategy, which is the last resort. And in that case, it is used particularly when the organization is declining, maybe the situation is of the shutdown. So at that point of time, this liquidation strategy can be referred, which can also have the concept of the bankruptcy model can also be referred in that particular case. So we have in today's discussion, we have reached to a level where we have discussed almost all the type of competitive strategies, the reasons and the conditions under which the competitive strategies can be referred. And in the case of corporate strategies, four major corporate strategies have been referred. And based on that, in the upcoming session, we'll be talking about the implementation part of these strategies. And till that day, a very good day. Thank you.